It's probably a safe bet that the all-powerful Chinese President Xi Jinping is not a regular viewer of 60 Minutes, but he'll certainly want to see this story. And that's because, from his point of view, it's all about the unthinkable. A Chinese spy, one of his own people, is betraying him, breaking ranks and defecting to the West. Australia, to be more specific. Tonight, China's dirty secrets will be revealed by a very brave man who's now placed a very big target on himself. And be in no doubt, what Wang Liqiang is doing is so dangerous, speaking publicly is probably the only way to save his life.
Hi, Nick. Are you around? We have something you might be interested in. An informant came to see us in relation to wanting to expose how the Chinese spy network works around the world.
As an investigative reporter, there are very few times I've received a message this important. It's late October, and one of my sources tells me a spy for the Chinese Communist Party wants to blow his cover.
Today, this guy was actually being followed. He realised that if he doesn't expose this soon, his life might be in danger.
I arranged to meet him in an airport hotel in Sydney. And what Wang William Liqiang reveals is stunning and unprecedented. Are you scared in speaking out?
To tell the truth, inside of me, I am extremely frightened.
This is a confession like no other. Never before has a Chinese spy gone public in this way. In from the cold, our insider admits personal involvement in a series of Chinese espionage missions. In Hong Kong, violence and kidnappings aimed at disrupting the democracy movement. And in Taiwan, a master plan to bring down the president. What risk is he taking in speaking out and going public?
Death. Death not just for him, but for his whole family.
The fate of Wang Liqiang and his young family now rests with the Australian government. He's told them Chinese spies are operating here with impunity. And tonight we corroborate his claims by exposing the operation to place an agent in our parliament.
It was like something out of a spy novel. This isn't just cash in a bag, given for favours. This is a state-sponsored attempt to infiltrate our parliament, and Australians should be very, very concerned about this.
Wang William Liqiang has painted for as long as he can remember. He loves the feeling of freedom and self-expression it brings him. And yet these are the very privileges he's devoted his adult life to destroying by working as a spy. Were you working as a Chinese intelligence officer?
Yes.
At 27, Wang's fresh-faced appearance belies a disturbing reality. For years, he says he's performed undercover espionage operations on behalf of the Chinese government.
None of my family members knew until I came to Australia and applied for a protection visa.
Wang says his life as a spy began when he was enlisted to work for a so-called investment company based in Hong Kong. But it was actually a front for Chinese government spy agencies. And he alleges his boss, Xiang Xin, was a high-ranking military official.
吸纳我成为他的重要的。
He was trying to recruit me as a core member.
He took you into his trust.
是的，
Yes.
他因为
To be honest, as a Chinese national, this was attractive.
这个职业，
As in, it's attractive to be a spy.
当时我们就
At
是
that time,
认为
the word spy didn't cross our mind.
用这个间谍
We just
这个
thought
词
that those things were the tasks we need to do for the
没有
country.
联想的太多。
One of Wang's first missions in Hong Kong was to sabotage the city's independence movement. For months now, the streets here have resembled a battle zone, with rolling protests and escalating violence. But the fight for control of Hong Kong has really been going on for much longer. For the first time, Wang reveals Beijing's secret strategies.
这个是我非常想告诉
This is something I really want to let the public
大众
know.
的一个事情。
I know very well the way they operate.
这个组织
To achieve his mission, Wang was ordered to infiltrate universities, to convert students away from democracy movements and into the arms of the Chinese Communist Party.
派他们加入学生会，对这些学生会的
We
人
sent some mainland students to join the Students' Association, and they pretended to support Hong Kong independence.
把他们的所有信息公布到
They
网上
found out information about those pro-independence activists. Then we attacked them verbally and made public all their personal data, as well as the data of their parents and family members.
有效的控制，
In such a way, it
然
effectively
后
silenced them.
派他们加入学生会，对
Did you instruct people to gather intelligence or information about dissidents, students, democracy activists?
首先我还是这样讲，他们都不一定知道自己这种行为是间谍。
They didn't necessarily know that they were spying.
各个国家的学生
The students in Australia and the other countries were not even aware that the so-called information collecting was espionage.
他都不知道他自己是一个间谍的行为。
It's not something he's proud of, but Wang says many of the students he influenced are now involved in the violent clashes with pro-democracy students, as we've seen again this week.
也一直
I influenced them with patriotism, guiding them to love the country, love the party and our leaders, and fight back strongly against those independence and democracy activists in Hong Kong.
领袖的这种精神，对
Could Wang ever come back here to Hong Kong?
No, he can't. He just can't do it. If he's for him to survive,
To stay alive?
to stay alive, he can't come back here.
Philip Gregory has spent years trying to expose Chinese spies. He says Wang's revelations about Beijing's activities in Hong Kong will ignite tensions. How rare is it that he's doing what he's doing?
This is once in a lifetime kind of situation. The fact that he's risked so much, and that he's so articulate about what he's doing, the fact that he can name names. This is incredible. You can have a rumour, but if you name names, it's a different story.
It's not just universities where Wang's spy operation worked its influence.
Many Western media outlets and politicians describe such activities as peaceful protests.
His extraordinary claim is that his boss infiltrated local media from inside major Hong Kong television networks. Does that have a ring of authenticity to it?
Absolutely. I mean, controlling the message is what it's all about. The idea is to get the message right to the people that need to know it. And in China, that's the party's message.
As a specialist in counter-espionage, Philip Gregory has watched our interview with Wang and scrutinised his claims. What are your impressions?
A young man full of incredible torment. A brave man. Someone who's really believes what he's saying.
You call him brave. How brave?
Incredibly brave, to a point that the only thing that I think sustains this man is his strong belief in what he's doing, and in particular on freedom for himself and for his children.
What would happen to you if you went back to China?
试想，一个间谍的背叛组织，
Imagine the consequence of a spy betraying the organization.
给我老婆的父亲提拔升职。
I know very well that the Chinese Communist Party can never be trusted.
中国共产党是不根本
Once I go
不可能
back,
信任的而且我一旦
I will be dead.
国家可以说是死无葬身之地。
Coming up,
That's not your name, is it?
disguise, distortion and deceit,
We established a cyber army. I gave the orders.
kidnapping and other crimes. You're making some big statements, but is he telling the truth?
Every detail can stand up to scrutiny.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Wang William Liqiang is the first Chinese spy to ever publicly blow his cover in Australia. He's exposing secrets about China's interference operations around the world. But in exchange, he urgently wants our protection. Wang, you're making some big statements. Why should Australia or Australians believe you?
我发出这个声明，
If I don't tell the truth, the Australian government will not protect me. There is no benefit for me. Every detail and every incident I have spoken about can stand up to scrutiny.
我没必要去。
We've come here to Hong Kong to verify parts of our insider story. It's a place that for him is far too dangerous to ever come back to. Wang says one of his most alarming assignments for Beijing was an operation that terrified the people of Hong Kong and caused international uproar.
4 others connected to the bookstore have reportedly disappeared in just the last 2 months.
It was late 2015 when, one by one, 5 owners of the Causeway Bay bookshop disappeared, only to reappear in detention on China's mainland. It's widely believed the abductions were ordered because the store was selling anti-Communist Party books. But Beijing's always denied it. And to be fair, there's never been any proof. Until now. Is it right that you helped organise the Causeway Bay bookshop kidnapping?
可以这样说吧，因为我是
You may say so, as I was one of the insiders who
就是
ordered the
传达
task.
任务的一个执行者。
This is the first time an agent inside the kidnapping operation has broken ranks. Most of the victims, like this man, Li Bo, were terrified of reprisals and so refused to admit they were kidnapped.
我就想偷偷地返嚟內地。
But Wang tells a very different story.
而且这个事情
We were directly involved in coordinating the kidnapping of Li Bo.
亲自参与协调的。
Wang says he personally delivered the orders from his boss to the kidnapping team.
而我们只
My boss's organization is in direct contact with the Chinese side.
算一
And what were the orders that you gave to the person you contacted?
抓捕李波，
Arrest Li Bo as soon as possible.
然后的特工
He sent 6 agents who took Li Bo from the storeroom of Causeway Bay Books directly to mainland China.
并且带了桂明海的那个老家。
It's just here, the bookshop. It was a major incident because people were just expressing their views.
Australian intelligence expert Philip Gregory knows the bookshop case well. And he's travelled with us to Hong Kong to help test Wang's story.
So, the sign says it's closed.
The Chinese state has always denied the kidnappings. Why is what our insider has to say about it so important?
Because he gives us the detail. From an intelligence point of view, what he's doing here is really pinpointing the series of actions that led up to it and giving us very clear insight as to why it happened and how it happened.
How will the Chinese state view him talking about the Causeway Bay bookshop kidnappings?
They'll see it as an essential betrayal. He's put himself against the biggest state in the world.
The details Wang is risking his life to reveal are extraordinary. But from our investigation, they hold up. In Hong Kong, we checked names, addresses, company details, and we've spoken to confidential sources. On the 22nd floor of this tower is the headquarters of Wang's spy operation. Business records link it to the Chinese military's weapons arm. The link hints at yet another of Wang's stunning revelations, that his organisation was allegedly involved in stealing US military intelligence.
To steal US intelligence is absolutely my boss's most important work. Why? He mentioned on many occasions that the US had been closely monitoring him because much of the US intelligence he had stolen was obtained in other countries.
Philip Gregory says Wang's decision to release insider secrets like this one will incense the Chinese Communist Party.
This is a threat that needs to be taken care of from their point of view. So I would have thought that we need to be extra vigilant with this young man.
He's, by speaking out, given himself a death sentence, effectively.
Long term, he has to face the prospect that his life will be always under threat because they will not forget.
Coming up,
Being followed is really scary.
made in China,
We could instantly take down their Facebook.
the plan to overthrow a foreign leader,
Taiwan is in the front line. All democratic countries should pay attention.
and the plot to infiltrate Australia.
He was cultivated by Chinese government to run as a Liberal Party candidate.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Most spies will face a moment, however fleeting, when their loyalty falters. But rarely does it lead to an operative abandoning his country and spilling its secrets. That's what makes Wang William Liqiang's decision so unusual. That's you in the photo?
Yeah.
Is that your date of birth?
No.
That's not your name, is it?
No.
He says his moment of truth came 6 months ago with the arrival of a fake passport. It triggered a deep fear that he was about to lose his true identity forever. When did you decide to become a defector?
想出走的时候是
I was given the task to go to Taiwan.
我以
This time I was to change my name,
我就跟他们
my
说
whole identity,
看我的
to go to Taiwan and be a spy there.
所以也是这也是我
This is the main reason I came to Australia to seek asylum.
也是一个非常大的原因。
The mission Wang's bosses planned for him in Taiwan would have been his most critical yet.
U.S. Navy chiefs sailed their warships through the strategic and highly sensitive Taiwan Strait today.
Taiwan is the major fault line between the world's two most powerful countries, the US and China. Some experts say tensions over Taiwan could even spark war. But as Wang reveals, a secret battle is already being waged.
台湾问题 也是非常重要的一个因素。
Among all issues, what the Chinese Communist Party is most concerned about is the unification of Taiwan.
真正能牵制中国。
Then Xi Jinping's position would be unshakable.
因为如果谁能
Our insider says Beijing wants to topple Taiwan's current US-friendly president, and its master plan to do it will alarm the world. Is it right what you're saying? Your job was to meddle in Taiwan's upcoming presidential election secretly for the Chinese government?
是的，因为我要改
Yes,
名改姓
that's why I needed to change my name and not use my true identity.
到达台湾。
Was your ultimate aim to make sure the current president of Taiwan was not elected?
Yes,
我们对台的工作呢，
Taiwan
最重要的工作
was the most important work of ours.
与
The infiltration into media,
的渗透
temples,
对
and
底下的
grassroots
基层组织
organizations.
进行一个渗透工作。
Temples like this one were targeted by Wang's operation because they're such important political and social hubs here in Taiwan. His ultimate aim was to undermine the Taiwanese president because she's considered hostile by Beijing. The world woke up to the reality of election meddling when Russia was exposed for interfering in the 2016 US election.
They use sophisticated cyber techniques to hack into computers and networks used by the Clinton campaign.
It's eerily similar to what's now playing out in Taiwan. Deputy Foreign Minister Su Qianshu is convinced his country's political system is under cyber attack from Beijing. But his government has never been able to prove it. Are you concerned?
Severely, yes. Gravely, we are gravely concerned about this.
Why should the international community care about what is going on in Taiwan?
Taiwan is in the front line. So it's not only an issue between China, the Communist China and Taiwan. It's an issue between two political camps in the world. So what's happening in Taiwan today is a good example for what will happen in other parts of the world. And I think all democratic countries should pay attention to what's going on in Taiwan.
Democracy here is hard-won and fiercely protected. At this rally, political factions fight it out in a passionate, if at times overzealous, display of freedom of speech and political expression. Taiwan's democracy looks healthy, but Wang claims it's under attack, and he should know. One of his key missions was to back the presidential candidate appearing here tonight by secretly meddling in the election. This is presidential candidate Han Kuo-yu. He's preferred by Beijing and boasts an army of backers. But during last year's local elections, he had a secret army too. Wang knows this because he was their boss.
我们成立了网军，比如我们要攻击谁，我们瞬间
We established a cyber army.
脸书
If we wanted to attack someone, we could instantly take down their Facebook.
台湾也有非常多的据点。
I was responsible for organizing the cyber army attacks, and a large number of people involved were university students.
对他们进行财务上的输出。
And you were giving orders?
我是给命令出去，而且就是
I
刚刚
gave
讲
the
到的这
orders.
些大学生
We changed their IP addresses to other countries so they would not be identified. Once our messages were out, online public opinion would
这
follow.
个反渗透能力也是非常强的。
Wang reveals his organisation also has control over operatives working at Taiwan's leading media outlets, who were directed to shift public debate in Beijing's favour.
Right now, we are facing multiple threats.
Do you think some within the Chinese Communist Party fear Taiwan's system of democracy?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, China has an authoritarian regime. Xi Jinping is his intent to disrupt our democracy, to undermine our government's credibility, and to decrease our citizens' trust in our government.
Would it surprise you to learn that the Chinese government is sending intelligence operatives into Taiwan with the order to interfere in the election?
If we understand how Chinese Communist Party runs their government, we won't be surprised by that.
Wang says he's supposed to be in Taiwan right now, carrying out his orders to sabotage the upcoming presidential election. Instead, since May, he's been hiding out in Australia, where his wife is studying and living with their 2-year-old son. It's taken 5 months for Wang to gather the courage to contact the Australian government and ask for protection.
Why did it take me so long to stand up? It was because during this period of time, they had been continuously trying to persuade me to come back, including following me in Australia.
You say you were followed. What happened?
They wanted to see whom and what kind of people I made contact with, to track my movements and find out my address. I have moved house 3 times within such a short time, and I may move again in the future, as the feeling of being followed is really scary.
Coming up, was Nick Zhao working for Asia? Mystery in Melbourne.
A guy who was a bit of a high roller, living beyond his means.
The Chinese plot.
It was surreal, like something out of a spy novel.
To penetrate our government.
The first thing I'd be doing is recruit him.
That's next on 60 Minutes. It's early March and a cleaner at a motel in suburban Melbourne has discovered a body on the floor of a room. The dead man is Nick Zhao, a Melbourne car dealer and a young father of 1. His death is sudden and mysterious, and whispers begin to spread, not only among his friends and family, but through Australia's intelligence world too. When did you first hear about Nick Zhao?
I heard about Nick Zhao several months ago.
What did you hear?
I heard that he was a 32-year-old Melbourne resident, cultivated by the Chinese government to run as a Liberal Party candidate in the Commonwealth Parliament, and Nick Zhao is now dead.
Federal MP Andrew Hastie chairs the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. He's been briefed on the suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of Nick Zhao, including allegations he was targeted by a Chinese spy ring.
It was surreal. It was like something out of a spy novel, happening in Melbourne with impunity, and very, very concerning.
Nick Zhao projected an image of success, flush with cash, fast cars and big plans to expand his auto business. In 2015, he joined the Liberal Party in the East Melbourne seat of Chisholm.
He was a paid-up member, which means he was likely active in his branch and division.
I love Chisholm.
The seat is currently held by Australia's first Chinese-born female MP, Gladys Liu. In September, she faced accusation she was a Manchurian candidate, planted by the Chinese Communist Party. The Prime Minister defended her.
I applaud the member for Chisholm. She's a great Australian who deserves to be in this House.
The story generated plenty of smoke, but very little fire. But something far more sinister had been happening in her electorate. We can reveal that prior to his death, Liberal Party member Nick Zhao claims to have been approached in Melbourne by a suspected Chinese spy ring and offered an extraordinary assignment. The young father was promised a 7-figure sum in exchange for him running as a political candidate in federal parliament.
Nick himself, I think, was a perfect target for cultivation. A guy who was a bit of a high roller in Melbourne, living beyond his means, someone who was vulnerable to a foreign state intelligence service cultivating him.
This case, with strong and clinical allegations and evidence of an actual plot to infiltrate our parliament, seems to go much further than anything we've heard to date. How important, how different, how serious is it?
Well, this isn't just cash in a bag, given for favours. This is a state-sponsored attempt to infiltrate our parliament using an Australian citizen and basically run them as an agent of foreign influence in our democratic system. So this is really significant, and Australians should be very, very concerned about this.
Sources say the suspected Chinese spy ring that targeted Nick Zhao is under investigation by ASIO. We can expose the identity of the man who, according to Nick Zhao, told him to infiltrate our parliament. His name is Brian Chen, and our investigation shows he appears to be a busy Chinese businessman who bounces between Melbourne and Asia. But when he last passed through Melbourne Airport, he was interrogated by Australian authorities and accused of being a spy. In Hong Kong, we tracked down his office. Corporate records confirm he's in business with the Chinese military's main weapons company, Norinco. What does his profile tell us about his likely connection to Chinese military intelligence?
It just looks like a trail across the sky, from my point of view.
Australian intelligence expert Philip Gregory says there are several red flags about Brian Chen's behaviour, which would have attracted ASIO's attention.
As an analyst, the first thing I'd be doing is targeting this guy for a disruption operation, or looking to recruit him.
It seems Nick Zhao was concerned about Brian Chen too. He never followed through on Chen's alleged request to infiltrate our parliament. Instead, his associates have told us he turned to Australia's national security agency, ASIO, for help. Was Nick Zhao working for ASIO?
I'm not going to go into the details of what I know. That would be improper.
We contacted Brian Chen and asked him if he knew Nick Zhao. He denied it. He also insists he's just a businessman who's been unfairly questioned by Australian authorities. But for a businessman, Brian Chen's denials are curious. For instance, he's been seen wearing a Chinese military uniform, but he says he simply likes to show off by dressing up in a costume. We asked him why he sometimes poses as a journalist at international conferences. He says it's because he simply likes to network. No one knows why Nick Zhao was found dead in a Melbourne motel room 8 months ago. There is no suggestion Brian Chen is involved. But whether it was natural causes, suicide or something more sinister, his death means he'll never repeat his allegations about the offer to infiltrate our parliament.
Everyone should be concerned about the way that Nick Zhao died, and I think we need a full investigation where we turn over every stone, we explore every nook and cranny, we cast as much light into the shadows and make sure that we have a full and comprehensive understanding of how he died and why he died.
You're known as being especially hostile to the Chinese Communist Party. Is this not you just engaging in a bit of China bashing?
Not at all. My bottom line is Australian sovereignty, protecting our values, our institutions and our people. And that's why I'm speaking out.
It's why our Chinese intelligence insider is talking too. Wang William LeCheng claims he's aware of multiple Chinese spies operating in Australia right now. During a meeting with our research team, he reveals his boss in Hong Kong has current dealings with Australia's most infamously accused Chinese government agent, Huang Zhaomou. Where is Huang Zhaomou right now?
就在象形公司吗？
In Hong Kong, in my boss's office.
Huang Zhaomou is in Mr. Xiang's office right now.
他说黄孝默现在就在黄孝那个。
这我们现在几点钟？我们现在几点？
Definitely, he is in his office right now.
The billionaire, who's been thrown out of Australia for his links with the Chinese Communist Party, is also being investigated for making dubious political donations. But Wang dismisses him as small fry compared to the Chinese spies Australia should be targeting.
Hang Jiangmo is definitely a small potato compared with others I know.
Are you willing to work with the Australian government to tell the government about how Chinese intelligence operates?
Since I have chosen to stand up, I am absolutely willing to cooperate.
Coming up,
He's come out into the light, hasn't he?
the dangerous consequences. Are you prepared never to see your mother, your father, you're back in China ever again? Of betraying Beijing.
I think it takes huge reserves of courage.
Is this spy a hero
Because it's got something that affects future generations.
or a fool? Are you worried you could be got at here?
I am very worried about my safety in Australia.
That's next on 60 Minutes. At 27, Wang William LeCheng is experiencing a taste of what freedom feels like. It's a privilege he desperately wants to hold on to, not for his own sake, but for the future of his wife and 2-year-old son. What is your hope for your wife, for your son, for yourself?
I love my wife and my family. I hope that my child's future life will not be manipulated in any way, and that he can live an independent, free, healthy, and positive life.
But Wang and his family are far from free, even as they hide out here in Sydney. In the weeks since he came forward to us, he says he's also met with ASIO. He's seeking Australia's protection, but there are no guarantees he'll get it. Federal MP Andrew Hastie says he deserves our help.
I think it takes huge reserves of courage to step out into the public square as a former Chinese spy and reveal to the Australian public what you've been up to.
Some Australians might be instinctively hesitant to say, well, he worked for the dark side. Why should we support this man?
Well, he's come out into the light, hasn't he? And he's a friend of democracy, and I think he deserves our protection and our support.
Should the Australian government give him a protection visa?
I'm of the view that anyone who's willing to assist us in defending our sovereignty deserves our protection.
Wang is living in constant fear of being watched or attacked, even inside Australia. He says his boss back in Hong Kong knows he's missing in action and has already taken steps to persuade him to return. Zhang Xin denies all of Wang's allegations and says they're untrue. Overnight, police in China released a statement accusing Wang of being a convicted fraud and wanted fugitive.
Since I came to Australia in May, they have worked on me. Their threatening was in a soft way, using my family members' well-being and safety to negotiate with me.
Intelligence expert Philip Gregory says Wang's public defection now places his life and that of his family back in mainland China in grave danger.
I really feel for the incredible torment that he's now facing, and he clearly has an incredible respect for his family. There's no question about that. But he sees this, what he's doing as being even more important because it's got something that affects future generations.
Condemned to a life under threat, Wang says he hopes his revelations will inspire those fighting for freedom of speech and democracy in the face of oppression from Beijing. He also wants Australia, his potential new home, to understand the Chinese Communist Party doesn't respect our sovereignty as it tries to grow its power. Are you worried you could be got at here in Australia?
I
am very worried about my safety in Australia. More importantly, my family, my wife and child. They knew nothing about this. Now they know. They are extremely frightened. If I am got at, my family will be destroyed. I don't know what future my child would have.
Hello, I'm Liz Hayes. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.